You know that feeling when you first wake up?
Mm-hmm.
The alarm goes off, you swing your legs out of bed, your feet hit the floor, and for just a split second, your body just pauses.
A hesitation.
Exactly, the hesitation. Or maybe it's reaching for the top shelf in the kitchen or trying to get out of a low chair after dinner.
Oh, yeah.
There's that little voice in your head, and it just whispers, my body doesn't bounce back like it used to.
It's a sentiment we hear all the time. And usually people panic a little. They think, oh, no, I've injured myself, or, this is it. I'm officially old.
Right.
But what's so fascinating in the research we have today is that it's usually not some big injury. You didn't necessarily pull a hamstring. It's subtler.
Yeah.
It's the stiff neck, the knees complaining on the stairs, or the hips just feeling rusty.
Rusty is the perfect word for it. It kept coming up in the source material. And it's just such a visceral description.
It is.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into that exact sensation. We've got a stack of research articles and white papers, all focused on the philosophy and the science behind something called biodynamics joint genesis.
And to be clear, we aren't just reading the label off a bottle here.
No, we are digging into the research they cite to really understand their argument about joint health.
And it is an argument. It's a pretty aggressive challenge to the status quo.
It really is.
The source material suggests a major paradigm shift. For the last, 50 years, the whole conversation around joints has been management.
You hurt, you take something, numb it, you carry on.
Numb it and move on. This research is pivoting toward mobility restoration.
Okay, so it's the difference between I'm not in pain and I can actually move freely.
Precisely.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the biology of why that rust happens, and spoiler alert,
Yeah.
it's way more complex than just wear and tear.
Much more.
And why the source argues that our modern lifestyle is, well, basically actively destroying our ability to move.
It's a pretty damning indictment of modern life, honestly.
It is. And then we'll look at their proposed solution, which involves this hydration logic that I frankly had not considered before.
Okay.
But before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem, because I feel like there's this massive contradiction happening right now for people in their 40s and 50s.
There absolutely is. If you look at the demographic data and the psychological profiles in our sources, people over 40 today, they're not old in the traditional sense.
No way. I mean, just look at 50 today versus 50 in, 1970.
Completely different species almost.
Yep.
People in this bracket today are mentally sharp, they're at the peak of their careers, they're motivated.
They want to travel, they want to hike.
Exactly. They want to play competitive tennis with their kids. Mentally, they feel 25.
But physically,
the hardware isn't keeping up with the software. And the source material makes a very compelling case that the culprit isn't just time passing.
right.
It's the modern lifestyle trap.
This part hit me hard. I read the stat in the notes, and I literally shifted in my seat.
I believe it.
The sources highlight that the average adult now spends between 8 to 10 hours a day sitting.
8 to 10 hours, and that's a conservative estimate for many people.
That's the desk, the Zoom calls, the commute in the car, and then, winding down on the couch at night to watch Netflix.
And most people think, well, yeah, sitting isn't great. I burn fewer calories. But the sources here go so much deeper into the physiology.
Okay.
They argue that for your joints, sitting is catastrophic. And it all comes down to how joints get fed.
Let's get technical for a second, because I always just assumed joints were like muscles. They have blood vessels, right?
Yeah.
You eat food, the blood takes nutrients to the joint.
That's the common misconception. But actually, cartilage, the cushioning in your joints, is avascular.
Avascular.
It means it has no blood supply, none. There are no veins pumping nutrients directly into your knee cartilage.
How does it stay alive?
Through the sponge effect. The source material explains this beautifully. Think of your cartilage like a stiff sponge that's soaked in fluid.
Okay.
When you move, when you take a step, you compress that sponge, and that squeezes all the waste products out.
Right.
Then when you lift your foot, the pressure releases, and the sponge sucks fresh, nutrient-rich fluid back in.
So movement is the pump.
Movement is the pump. Without that compression and decompression, there is no nutrient exchange. So when you sit for 8 hours,
The pump is off.
the pump is off, the fluid becomes stagnant, the sponge starts to dry out, it's not getting fed.
Wow.
So essentially, by staying still, we are starving our joints.
That is terrifying. It's not just that we are getting stiff, we are physically preventing the joint from even repairing itself.
Precisely. And this leads to another huge issue the text raises. The weekend warrior fallacy.
Oh, I know this one. This is me.
It's most of us. We sit for 10 hours, starving the joint.
No.
And then we think, okay, I need to be healthy. I'm going to go to the gym for 45 minutes and just crush a high-intensity workout.
Yeah. I feel attacked. But yes, that's the logic. I'm undoing the sitting.
But look at it through the lens of that sponge analogy. You've left the sponge on the counter all day. It's dry, it's brittle,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you slam it with intense force. What happens to a dry sponge when you twist it really hard?
It tears, it cracks.
Exactly. The source argues that you can't undo a day of sedentary behavior with one burst of stress on the joints. In fact, if the joints are already dry, that burst of intense exercise might actually be accelerating the damage.
That is a huge aha moment. We're trying to force the machine to race without checking the oil first.
Which leads us directly to the biology of this so-called rust.
Yeah.
This source material uses the engine analogy, which is a classic, but I want to go a layer deeper because the text gets into some specific chemistry here that explains why the sponge dries out.
Okay, let's dig in. Because usually when I hear joint health, my brain just goes to calcium. Drink your milk, build strong bones.
And that's for bones, that's structure. But the rustiness, the stiffness, the creaking, that's not a bone density issue at all.
So what is it?
It is a synovial fluid issue.
Synovial fluid, that's the oil.
That's the oil. It's a thick, sort of egg white-like substance that fills the joint cavity. It lubricates the cartilage so the bones glide instead of grinding.
Okay.
But here's the key scientific insight from the biodynamics research. It's not just about having the fluid, it's about the quality of that fluid.
What makes the quality go down?
A molecule called hyaluronan, or hyaluronic acid.
I've seen that in skincare commercials. For plumping up your skin.
It's the same principle. Hyaluronan is a goo molecule. Its superpower is that it can hold up to 1,000 times its own weight in water.
1,000 times.
1,000. It is the thing that turns water into thick, cushioning jelly. Without hyaluronan, the fluid in your knees would just be...
watery.
Just watery. It wouldn't cushion anything.
Okay, so hyaluronan is the thickener.
It's the shock absorber. But here's the kicker, and this is the stat that just stood out to me in the research.
Yeah.
By the time you are 50, your body's natural production of hyaluronan drops by about 50%.
Whoa. Half.
Half. So you have half the boo you had in your 20s.
So even if I drink a gallon of water a day, if I don't have the hyaluronan to hold on to it.
It doesn't matter. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a giant hole in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You can pour as much water in as you want, but without the hyaluronan to bind it and keep it in the joint cavity, the joint just stays dehydrated.
So the rust isn't just wear and tear. It's a chemical deficiency. The joint is thirsty, but it's lost its cup.
That is a perfect way to put it. The joint has lost its cup. And this creates a vicious cycle.
Okay.
Less fluid means more friction. More friction means inflammation. And inflammation produces these enzymes that, guess what they do?
Break down the joint even more.
They break down hyaluronan.
So it spirals.
It just spirals. And this brings us to the whole reactive versus proactive debate in the text. Because when that spiral starts and your knee starts hurting, what do?
Well, I'm an American male, so I ignore it for 6 months.
Right.
But eventually I reach for the ibuprofen or the cooling gel.
The old standard. NSAIDs, painkillers, patches.
And look, I'm going to push back a little here. When I'm in pain, I don't really care about hyaluronan molecules. I just want the throbbing to stop. Are the sources saying we shouldn't manage pain?
No, and that's a fair point. Acute pain management has its place. But the expert analysis here is critical of relying only on that. Their whole argument is pain relief doesn't equal joint repair.
It's the difference between turning off the fire alarm and actually putting out the fire.
Exactly. Think about the check engine light in your car. If that light comes on because you're low on oil and you just put a piece of black tape over the dashboard light.
The annoying light is gone.
But the engine is still grinding itself to death. Painkillers are the black tape. They block the signal to the brain. They reduce the inflammation, temporarily.
But they do nothing for the root cause.
Absolutely nothing to restore the hyaluronan levels or rehydrate that synovial fluid.
In fact, the source mentions some research suggests long-term use of certain painkillers might actually inhibit cartilage repair.
There is evidence of that.
Yeah.
It stops the signaling process the body needs to initiate repair. So the biodynamics text argues we need to shift from reactive pain management waiting until it hurts to proactive joint care.
Okay, so let's talk about their proposed solution. The text focuses on this biodynamics joint genesis. And I admit, whenever I see a proprietary blend mentioned, my skepticism radar, it pings a little.
As it should.
So let's strip away the branding for a second. What is the actual mechanism they're proposing?
Well, the text emphasizes that this formulation is inspired by that specific decline in hyaluronan we just talked about. It's doctor-formulated, and it's aimed right at the root cause. So their whole philosophy seems to be built on 3 pillars: lubrication, hydration, and structural support.
So instead of just numbing the nerve, they're trying to refill the cup.
Right. They were trying to reintroduce the substrates, the raw materials that the body needs to produce that healthy synovial fluid again. They want to rethicken the oil.
I noticed they use a very specific term in their marketing and instructions. They don't call it a treatment or a medicine. They call it a ritual.
Yes.
And I have to ask, is that just marketing fluff? Because ritual sounds like something you sell to people to make them feel fancy about taking a pill.
I had the exact same reaction at first. It sounds very wellness influencer.
Yeah.
But if you look at the behavioral psychology behind it, it's actually quite smart.
How so?
Well, think about how we treat medicine. You take medicine when you're sick, when you feel better.
You stop. True.
But joint health, based on the biology we just covered, is about maintenance. You can't just take this stuff for a week and expect your knees to be fixed for life. It's a constant battle against that natural decline. By framing it as a ritual, like your morning coffee.
It becomes a habit.
Exactly. You don't drink coffee because you have a caffeine deficiency disease. You drink it because it optimizes your performance for the day. You brush your teeth, not because you have a cavity right now, but to prevent one later.
So they are trying to move joint care into the same mental bucket as brushing your teeth.
Yes. It's the daily maintenance bucket. And the sources suggest that compliance, actually taking it every single day, is the only way to see results with this kind of biological mechanism. The ritual language is designed to solve that compliance problem.
That makes a lot of sense. It's shifting your identity from patient to person, optimizing their body.
Correct. And the source implies that people who view it this way as a daily investment rather than a quick fix are the ones who actually see the mobility return.
Let's talk about that return, the so what, because we've covered the goo and the sitting and the pills. But the source material gets surprisingly emotional when it talks about the results.
It does. And I think that's because after 40, the stakes of mobility just change dramatically.
It's not about looking good in a swimsuit anymore.
No. It's about autonomy. The source lists these priorities that really strike a chord. It's about wanting to book that walking tour in Europe without fear.
Yeah.
It's about getting down on the floor to play Legos with the grandkids and not having to look for a piece of furniture to haul yourself back up.
Oh, the furniture haul. That is the defining moment, isn't it? When you realize you can't just stand up.
It is. That loss of confident movement is a huge psychological blow. And this brings up a phrase that keeps popping up in the podcast world, and it's echoed in our sources.
What's that?
Mobility, not muscle, is the real sign of aging well.
I love that concept.
It's a profound shift. In our 20s, fitness is often about aesthetics or raw power. How much can you bench? How big are your biceps?
Right.
But as we age, mobility becomes the true wealth.
It's the new status symbol.
It really is. I mean, think about it. If you see an 80-year-old with huge muscles, but he's shuffling along in pain, he looks old. But if you see an 80-year-old who is thin but moves fluidly, who walks with a spring in their step...
They look ageless.
Exactly. Fluidity is the marker of youth. And the argument here is that we should be investing in that fluidity just as aggressively as we invest in our 401ks.
That's a great analogy. We compound our money, but we just let our bodies depreciate.
And the preventative mindset, supporting the hyaluronan levels before they crash, keeping the sponge wet before it dries out, that is the physical equivalent of compound interest. You are making small deposits of hydration every day so that when you're 70, you can withdraw a trip to the Alps.
Instead of withdrawing a walker.
Harsh. But yes, that is the reality. And that's why this company pitches itself the way it does. It's not selling pain relief. It's selling future freedom.
But coming back to reality for a second, we are still stuck in the modern lifestyle trap.
Yeah.
I can't just quit my job to walk around all day to keep my sponges pumping.
No, of course not. And the source acknowledges that. We have to work. We have to drive.
So what's the balance?
The balance is mitigation. We have to acknowledge that our environment, the chair, the car, is hostile to our joints. So we have to actively confuse the system.
Okay.
We have to stand up every hour. But more importantly, according to this text, we have to support the internal environment.
Because we can't always change the external one.
Right. If you know you're going to be sitting, which dries you out, You need to be even more aggressive about the internal hydration and lubrication. You need to ensure the goo is there so that when you do move, it counts.
So let's bring this deep dive in for a landing. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We started with the rust, that morning stiffness that feels like aging, but is actually a biological warning sign.
A warning sign of dehydration, really.
Then we looked at the modern trap, how sitting just turns off the nutrient pump to our cartilage. We debunked the idea that you can just gym your way out of it without prepping the joints first.
The dry sponge theory.
And we got into the nitty-gritty of hyaluronan, the missing molecule. And we realized that simply drinking water isn't enough if you don't have the cup to hold it.
And that relying on painkillers is just masking the symptom while the root cause gets worse.
Finally, we looked at biodynamics, not as, a magic wand, but as a potential tool in the toolkit, a way to top up the oil level in the engine so the car keeps running.
And ultimately, that's the takeaway. Aging doesn't have to mean slowing down, but ignoring your joint biology almost guarantees it.
It's a choice. You can be reactive or proactive. You can wait for the rust, or you can keep the machine oiled.
The source suggests mobility isn't lost, it's just thirsty. That's a powerful perspective to hold on to.
It really is. And before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought. We kind of touched on this with the whole ritual idea, but I want to double down on it.
Let's hear it.
We talked about brushing teeth. It's non-negotiable hygiene. We don't complain about it, we just do it.
It's automatic.
If we view joint care exactly like dental care, as something we do every single morning to prevent body decay, rather than waiting for the cavity of pain, how would that change the way you plan your morning tomorrow?
That's the question. If you want to keep your teeth, you brush. If you want to keep your stride,
You hydrate the joints. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into mobility, the science of the sponge, and staying fluid in a stiff world.
keep moving.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.